10, 9, 8. Good evening and welcome to the Defiance City Council meeting for tonight, May 7th, 2024. Before we get underway, we have Pastor Dave Brobston from here in town who is going to open us up in prayer. Before you get underway, Pastor Brobston from City Council, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service to the city of Defiance.
My pleasure. Another trip around the sun. Like I told a friend today, it only matters when you're driving, when you're voting, when you're drinking, and when you're retiring. So only one more trip. If you would you pray with me? Gracious God, we give you thanks this night for those who are called to lead and who lead in our community, in our state, and in our nation. We pray for those who suffered the ravages of storm last night and this afternoon, and those who are under the gun yet this evening. Be with those who have lost and those who will lose, and be with those who will run in and leave their families behind. Gracious God, you surround us with a great cloud of witnesses, those who give us hope and joy. Be with this group this night as they discern your will. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. This meeting is called to order. Let the record show that all the members of council are present this evening. This evening we have Chris Sindel from Troop 75 here as a guest with us this evening, who has kindly offered to lead us in the pledge. Would you stand with us for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Sindel. This evening, do we have any council reports or requests? No. Do we have any comments from council this evening? Mr. Hancock.
I just have a couple things. Is it feasible, I know that our fireworks has taken effect, our fireworks changes have taken effect, I believe, on May 3rd. Just asking if we could put those changes on our website, of the changes that have taken place. And the second thing I wanted to commend, I had a resident give a shout out to the water treatment plant. They were having some water issues, and with the chemists there were very helpful with the resident in getting some testing and some results done with minimal fees involved. And apparently that's a service that we provide in our area that I wasn't quite aware of, and the resident was very pleased, very pleased. So good job, chemists. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Crutch.
Yeah, I received a letter, I guess in the paper it stated that we were going to be spraying for mosquitoes at the end of the month. And this person was asking if it could be moved up because of all the rain and whatever. The mosquitoes are horrible right now. He lives on Wildwood Drive, and he's just saying that he can't even go out and get his mail without getting...
Experienced similar mosquito problems over the weekend. We have had complaints that have come in to the city. So we have to actually calibrate the vehicle before we can start spraying. So we are getting that taken care of, and spraying will begin next week.
All right, awesome, thank you.
Yep.
That's all.
Mr. Corbett.
Do we happen to have any updates on our request for proposal on the 1918 building?
We did extend that deadline to
June 30th.
There's been a lot of activity.
Anything that looks promising?
Several.
Okay. In your typical non-committal.
Stop by my office.
All right.
Mrs. Crutch.
Also that this weekend is the Lilac Festival, so make sure people go downtown from 10 to 4, correct? And there'll be food vendors and crafters and lots of thing and art, so check it out.
Any other questions or comments from council? Right. This evening at 5:30, we had a meeting of the whole in order to discuss the recommended changes for the zoning code. Glenn Grisdale was our guest. I think it was a productive meeting. They're going to make some amendments to the proposed ordinance and proposed changes, get them back to us for our review. But that's what happened tonight here at 5:30. Mayor McCann.
Thank you, Mr. President. This Friday is our Hall of Fame ceremony at the Strady at 7 p.m. Terry Tough Ryan will be inducted. Terry was the author of the prize winner of Defiance. It's certainly well deserved. It's always a very nice event, and for those that attend, generally afterwards, the Tuttle Museum is open and for everyone's enjoyment. Speaking of the Tuttle, late last week I received an email that spurred a little bit of conversation that I thought would interest you folks. Came from Joe Domer. Joe wrote, "My son is driving east from Ball State University to New Hampshire and sent me the attached photo. Domersville Road exit. I currently live in St. Louis, Missouri, but was raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Needless to say, both he and I had to do a double take. According to the city's website, you are a native of Defiance, Ohio, and could possibly share some background information on the name of this road." I abruptly forwarded it to the folks at the Tuttle, who came up with this answer, which I thought would interest you. Joshua Domer was named postmaster of a new post office location, which was then named Domersville, in August 1892. He lived in Adams Township on what came to be called Domersville Road. He resigned his post in May 1898, and the post office was discontinued June 27, 1899. The Domers later moved to North or South Dakota, but later to Indiana, and are buried in the Poplar Ridge Cemetery. Joshua and his wife Mary had 4 children: Ella, who died in 1882, Alice, Elmer, and Lily all died in 1895. They are also buried in the Poplar Ridge Cemetery. This happens with some regularity. I don't often share that with council, but I thought since we were going to be together, I'd share it with you and thank the Tuttle for that little tidbit. Also, this Saturday, the food bank does its annual food drive where we put food out in bags, and the letter carriers take that up, and thank you to them for all of that. And finally, just a reminder, the last Monday in May is our annual Memorial Day program at Riverside Cemetery, scheduled for 10 o'clock in the morning. Guest speaker is Roger Zedike, and we'll give more details as the date draws near. And that's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We touched on mosquitoes, which I'm sure several of you have heard complaints about it, so I'm glad we're getting that kicked off next week. It shows the sign of summer is coming. Again, the Lilac Festival. So there's an extension on what's going to be closed down. Thanks to Kirsty, it's growing and it's becoming an even bigger event than it was before. So look for the roads to be closed from 2nd Street, pretty much down to Arabella. More vendors will be there, but with that expansion, we just ask that people, be mindful of pedestrians. There's going to be a lot of people in downtown. We want everybody to be safe as we go through that. The only other thing I had was I had received some just a couple phone calls from some more seasoned citizens within our community who had questions about OmniFiber, had questions about all this internet going on in town. I know we've talked with OmniFiber here. You all have asked about it in the past. They had that kind of in their head that was the only thing that was going on for the internet. And so I just wanted to touch on, yes, OmniFiber is still working mostly south of the river right now. I don't believe that they've crossed into anything north. If you see people north, it tends to be companies like Brightspeed or Metalink running fiber. All of those companies have done work upgrading their systems or just installing systems. So Brightspeed can be found all over town, depending on where they're working. OmniFiber, like I said, are mostly south of the river at this point. And then again, Metalink has run several fiber lines, upgrading towers to their next-gen tower and running lower WAN networks. So we have a lot of connectivity being worked on in town. And thank you to Melinda in our engineering division, trying to keep all of that construction going well and smoothly and keeping our citizens happy. So, and that's all I have, Mr. President.
Oh, since you bring that up,
Yes.
I did receive a phone call over the weekend on whether it's Brightspeed, Omnifiber, or Metalink, whoever's working, if there is damage done to a citizen's yard, is the company obligated to fix it, straighten it out?
Don't know the situation, so I can't say definitively, yes, of course it is their job to go fix it, but it's something that they need to work through with the company. We get those complaints in as well, from things that are claimed to be damaged from the company, and maybe they did damage them, or maybe they didn't. So we can't kind of get into the middle of that. It's between them and the company. Theoretically, if the company causes damage, then you would put them, and they should take care of it for them.
That was my inclination, but I thought I'd ask.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, the Charter Review Commission met in here for the last time yesterday evening. And we basically went over all of the proposed changes. There are 11 of them. We will bring the legislation to you on, not next meeting, but 2 meetings from now on May 28th. And that was only because a lot of them wanted to attend and present the changes to you. And then from there, the charter says that council shall certify those changes to the electors for the November ballot. So we will have an ordinance for you on May 28th. And I just want to thank the volunteer members. They were very thorough this year. I believe that's why there are so many recommended amendments and changes.
All right. Thank you. And Ms. Sprague.
Yep, just a couple of things. I have a few purchase orders. Streets 2024-01011, Porter's BP, that's for fuel, $16,819. Parks and Rec 2024-00992, Heritage Pool Supply, chemicals for the 24 pool season, $15,000. And then Parks, excuse me, Parks and Recs again, 2024-00970, Smith and Wheeler, the Kingsbury basketball court redo, and that will be grant reimbursed. And that amount is $36,230. I had received notification from the Ryan sent it to me, but Ohio Department of Safety that we could file for some reimbursement from the eclipse for some of our expenses. So it's not huge money, but it's something. So I went ahead and filed for that. It was very specific on what you could ask for to get back. So basically everything we did we could ask for, but there were a few things we can get. So I think they're going to make an announcement. They emailed me back today. They received all my information, but in the next 30 to 45 days, they'll let you know if you're gonna be awarded any of the funds. And we were in the top group of, what did they call the zone that we were in the zone of a place to attract.
Such a busy month, who even remembers?
Yeah, but
Sphere of it.
we were in the zone of a place to come, and so we were in one of the many counties that they'll look at first before they disperse funds to the other. So, so I thought that was a win, I guess.
Zone.
Yeah.
Totality, right? Is that?
There we
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
I couldn't think of the word. And then just another update. We received the first quarter payment for our hotel motel funds, and that was up $90,000, which actually doubled over our first quarter payment of $23,000. Those funds are special funds. They get receipted into the hotel motel revenue and expense line. They help offset the cost of the Tourism Bureau, which is the DDVB, the Tuttle, and also other special projects, as well as the subsidy funds for the programs, for example, the DBA, DSA. So I let Kirsty know. She's excited to see an influx there, but a couple of the hotels are still going through some construction. A couple of the others have some contracts that are blocking up a decent amount of rooms, so that's where the influx came from. So I'm hoping I don't know that will maintain itself long term, but maybe for this year we'll see a nice little increase, which is always good. So, and that's all I have.
Oh, well, thank you very much. We do have one item of legislation for consideration this evening. It's a second reading, an ordinance authorizing a scope and services contract for the first 2 phases of a Parks and Riverfront Master Plan and declaring an emergency. Mayor McCann?
Thank you, Mr. President. I've tried to reflect a little bit more on parks since we met 2 weeks ago, and I appreciate the opportunity. I cut my teeth in government and parks when, however many years ago, I would guess 40 years ago, I was asked to serve on the Metro Park Board for Defiance County, and then where Mayor Kistner was mayor, in order to get some collaboration between city and county, she asked me to serve on the city park board. That eventually was elected to chairman of the park board, which gave me a seat on planning commission, and then somehow I ended up in this seat. I guess those things just happen. But specifically talking about parks and how we got to where we are today, requesting council's approval of the Parks and Riverfront Master Plan, I really had to go back to probably somewhere around 2013, 14. I think the final plan was done in 15. We met at Mrs. Mack's office, not that Mrs. Mack, her mother-in-law, when she was head of the DDVB. Someone, I don't know whether it was the Visitors Bureau, I didn't do much research on it because I don't know how important it is. Whether it was the Visitors Bureau or the city or a collaboration of the two, maybe even some with the Metro Park Board, but we began to formulate a Parks Master Plan in the vicinity of the confluence. It involved Pontiac Park, which is why at that meeting there were representatives from the Metro Park Board. It involved, of course, the Fort Grounds. It involved Kingsbury Park. And that master plan was developed. I can't remember the lady from Beckett and Rader's name, but she was pretty impressive. And she occasionally would bring in other people. And we spent many, many months formulating a plan for that area. And I'm sure you've all seen those boards. They are still down in the front conference room, and we are very proud to display those to this day. And where we probably use them the most effectively is when we have two areas. When we have guests in to do economic development discussion, we sort of put them out there so these companies and their representatives that we're working with can see that we're formulating a plan to improve our parks and our riverfront. But one of the times we use them, and some of you council folks may be involved in this, it was just pre-pandemic when out at Defiance College, for I think at least 2 years, I think the year the pandemic hit, it was canceled, there was the Home and Garden Show. And maybe some of you worked some shifts in that. It was very enjoyable. But we had those boards front and center on display. And people would come and we would talk about what all that was and inform them. Now this is pre-pandemic, so this is, 6-7 years ago now? I sort of lost time, but started to get input, and that again formulated a plan. As I said last week, there was more discussion on that when we were working on the strategic plan, and then when we started to do the comprehensive plan. And when we were working on the comprehensive plan, Mr. Grisdale gathered up all of those reports from years and years and years and years and consolidated them into that comprehensive plan that was approved by council some time back. And that's been good. And we use that comprehensive plan, and that is a tool that we use in here especially Nikki and her team and Melinda and her team, as we look at planning for residential subdivisions, commercial and industrial development. Erica Willitzer, who was here, she's still back there, hiding behind Kim, can use that same comprehensive plan when she's working with economic development to demonstrate that we as a city have our act together. And we do. And I'm very proud of that. And I'll just say, I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about our planning and zoning code. I know none of you were there, but one of my proudest days as mayor is when I sat on that stage in Findlay a few weeks ago and represented us as one of the top 10 micropolitans in this nation. In this nation. Just another example how we have our act together. I was proud of that. So what we've come to you and asked for is to continue that momentum. And we think our next step is this Parks and Riverfront Master Plan, because it is a question that's asked. When I first got involved in economic development 20 years ago with Jerry Hayes, and I'd ask Jerry, what are some of the keys to economic development? And he would say to me, labor cost. Companies want to know labor cost. That was it. They didn't want to know about what it was going to cost them to acquire ground. They didn't want to know about access to major highways. Now, this is pre-US 24. They want to know what the labor costs would be. But if I ask Mrs. Willitzer what some of those key things are, I believe she's going to answer quality of life. Companies want to know what the quality of life is. They want to know it's reasonably cost effective to live here. They want to know we have a low crime rate. They want to know we have good schools. They want to know that there's recreational opportunities for their people. They understand that recreational opportunities for their employees creates a quality of life, and a good quality of life leads to good health. And they want good health because we all know that healthcare is expensive. So there's a component there that I think we have to consider. So with that, I would just say that one of the reasons we want to seriously consider adopting this riverfront plan, master plan, in my opinion, is it pulls everything together and it gives us a plan to work from. It's consolidated, it's united, it answers questions for us that nobody in this room, and I think you all know, I think pretty highly of Melinda Sproul as our engineer and Nikki Warnke as our planner and my team here. But when you look at making improvements along the riverfront, access to the river, there's working with the Army Corps and working with the EPA, state and US EPA, it's different. And they don't have the expertise to do that. The company we're talking to does. So I guess, I just want to say again, we aren't Bryan. I like Bryan, nice community. I really like their mayor. I like Archibald. We're not Napoleon. We're bigger than all of them. In fact, we might be almost as big as all of them put together. But we're not them. We're a community of 17,000 people. We're a growing community. We're getting bigger. And we'd like to get bigger yet. And this is a way to do that. This is a way to do that. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Rusty.
I'm not opposed to the improvements to our parks or the riverfront. I think those are needed. In regards to this ordinance, I'll be voting no. I talked to many people who were not in favor for the cost, because of the cost of the master plan. And all were opposed because of the tridge. And in my opinion, I believe the timing for this project is not now. Thank you.
Mr. Mast.
I think I agree with Mr. Rusty on timing. It seems like there's some issues that need to be addressed before we get to anything like this. Do we own all the properties in the Kingsbury area and the riverfront area there? Have those all been acquired yet? Are they still standing in the way of what's going to happen? So, I mean, do we plan that and erase those from the map and just assume that we'll have those acquired at some point?
I think we can plan around them, we can plan with them, or we can plan without them. Nikki?
Yes. I mean, we do own quite a few of them.
But there are some left, right?
There's probably a few left, that we didn't use any money on.
One's coming before you shortly, in the next few
Yeah.
weeks.
I mean, it's not necessarily gonna look exactly like that riverfront plan from 2014, 15. There's gonna be a lot of public input on this plan. We've never really had this level of public input for anything that we've done before that we're gonna have by doing this plan. I think that's very important for our community. I mean, we've done surveys before, which are great, but this is actually, people coming in and interviewing people and listening to what people really want. We have a lot of people that are excited about the parks as they are now, but they wanna know what's next. What are we doing next? What are we gonna keep going?
Part two of my timing question, I guess, then is what this basically is gonna bring about are projects that are gonna require funding. So where's our funding? I mean,
That'll be in the
we
plan.
have a Parks Master Plan. Where's the money come from?
That'll be in the plan.
They're gonna put money in the plan?
They're not gonna put money in the plan, they will give us direction on how that money's to be raised, and what this plan will allow us to do.
Is it gonna be a levy? I mean,
It
is
could
that
well be
the
a levy.
ultimate goal?
It could well be a levy. And you know what, that came up 2 weeks ago. I have talked levy for 5 years. I have talked levy at my State of the City addresses, I've talked levy at First Friday luncheons with the Chamber of Commerce, I've talked levies when I've spoken to the Rotary Club. I've talked levy, and I have said to people, what we were hearing in our community engagement meetings that we were holding was people said that they would be willing to support a levy if there was a plan in front of them that told us what those things were going to be. And I think that probably, Mr. Mast, was one of the biggest impetuses behind pursuing this plan, so that we had something to show people this was the plan. This would be the plan for year 3, 4, 5, 10, looking out there and how those projects would be completed. Mr. Uresti mentions the Tridge. We don't know whether the Tridge will come forward or not. This ordinance does not authorize the construction of a Tridge. All it does is, included in the plan, is it suggests that the company that's doing this, JPR, discuss, when they're doing their community involvement, the idea of a Tridge to get more feedback from what folks think. But if the Tridge would ever come to fruition, I would think the process simply would be that the idea to do it would come before council. Council would have to approve an ordinance authorizing the engineering to do it, the application of grants. Council would have to approve an ordinance that would allow a levy to be conveyed and voted on by the voters. Ultimately, if there's a Tridge gonna be built, it's gonna be approved by the voters. I say, you're talking about the timing of this. The time for this discussion, in my opinion, would have been last October or November when we put this item in the budget in front of you and you approved it. And I realize it's a little bit over budget, but it was in the budget. None of this discussion occurred then. And we have spent weeks and weeks and weeks getting to where we are tonight. And, it was a lot of work for what sounds like could be nothing.
It would also allow us to know, most likely we're going levy, and that's a process in itself. And then it would also let us know what the millage would be, what it would look like for the homeowner, and where we go from there. Without any of this, we have no good gauge on what you could even put a levy on for, to relay that information, to be transparent to the voters.
And it's not just levy. We look at state capital funding all the time. Every 2 years, we want to get our project into the state capital bill. The chance to get an increased amount of money relies on having some multi-stage plan. Every legislator I've talked to, whether it's back when I'm at the county, whether it's here now at the city, is the request you're making part of a laid out multi-stage plan? If the answer is no, well, they kind of have a set amount they'll work on you with and try to get you some money. They want to, the state legislature, when they're doing those types of funding opportunities, want to see that you have a long-term vision. That it isn't just a one-off. And so we've talked to Toledo Metro Parks. Toledo Metro Parks weren't built because of just some giant levy. It's public-private partnerships. It's having the private sector see that we're investing and we're willing to throw money in there as a city, getting those private partners on side. It also does include levies, but again, you can pull the state in. You can look at all other forms of funding once you have that long-term vision that you're willing to show people. And they don't want to see the pretty pictures. We had the pretty pictures. That was the last plan. But, they want to see that you have the nuts and bolts ready to go, that if that funding is authorized, the projects will get taken care of. So it's not just levy. Yes, the mayor has discussed levy. We've talked about levy. They're looking at levies, but there's so many other pieces.
It's a combination of multiple. And I'm sure it'll take some from our capital, like we've been funding the other park projects. But without that big piece to know what we need, I don't know how we move forward either. And we put it in the budget. I know it's over, but you could definitely pull the difference from the hotel motel if you want, go that route. I just think it's why I understand your point of the funds, but we did put it in the budget. I think to move forward with all those plans, it'll save us money in the long run.
Oh, Mr. Mask?
I think my point as far as focus, if we were to focus something more particular instead of this big plan, then we could find out what we needed where, and we could get a levy or approval for funding somewhere. I'm not opposed to levies at all. I'm willing to pay for parks. That's where I'm at. But it seems backwards to me to assume that people will pay without knowing, to go forward and have a plan. To
What
me,
do you
it makes
mean?
more
But
sense
the
to know
plan-
that people are willing to put their money out there for the projects versus have the projects and then find the money. But that's the way
Well, this is the plan currently.
we have plans, don't we?
No, we really don't.
You just said last meeting, I think you said there are plans for Veterans Memorial Park.
To finish Kingsbury.
Veterans Memorial.
We have a little conceptual plans, but not plans.
Does this,
Difference between a concept and a plan.
if we approve this Parks Master Plan, is that gonna stagnate any kind of progress in the parks for approximately 2 years until it's all finished? I mean, you don't wanna go ahead with things if you're gonna.
Nikki's working right now on Veterans Park, Laddies Grove. She's putting all that together. That'll get done next year. Parks Master Plan was gonna get worked on this year, completed next year. Then we should have that, hopefully, by budget time 25. And we'll have to see where that leads us. Beyond Laddies Grove, Mr. Mast, as Mr. Waxter alluded to 2 weeks ago, we have done a lot of work in our parks. We have. But going forward, most of what we want to do are the larger projects: Gateway, Buckman, riverfront walkways, connectivity. Connectivity is a pretty big piece and a pretty cool piece, but we're not exactly sure how to go about it. And that's what we think JPR can help us with, is making those connections along the river walk and how we can go about that, being respectful of the river, mindful of erosion, working with, again, the Army Corps and the EPA and whoever else comes along down the line. But we don't have anybody on staff with the expertise to do that.
What happened to the planning for the Buckman Park area?
It's a concept.
It's just a concept.
It's just a concept. There isn't 1 ounce of engineering. There is nothing done with elevations. The extent of the work at Buckman Park was put up a sign and a swing.
On the Buckman Park though, didn't we spend quite a bit of money to Bowling Green to have the Native American monument to look into and decide what it's gonna be? I mean, there was many meetings we had on that. And Bowling Green State University came down and we did charts and we wrote and you know, and there's nothing yet to show, and I've had lots of people ask me about how much money did we put into that, and there's nothing to show for it.
I don't remember how much that was. We also used J.D. Orr. He was the artist that drew up some concepts. I think his fee for many things other than just that was $8,000 or $10,000. And we have all of those, and all of those, if JGR doesn't already have them, I think we probably gave them to all three, right?
Mr. Engel?
Yeah, we'll talk about levy. If we would do a levy on that, when would that come about? Would that come about this fall?
Oh, no.
Next year, or whenever? Or is it?
The absolute earliest would be November of '25,
Okay,
and I'm not sure we can make that.
okay. I thought this would be
So,
too early.
spring of '26, fall of '26, I don't, we can't do anything till the plan's completed, as far as a levy goes.
Okay,
And this legislation does not commit you to a levy.
No.
That's separate
Right.
legislation you would
Right.
have to authorize.
I just,
understand that.
as I said, Mr. Engel, what kind of upset me last week, the levy got brought up like it's the first time we've ever talked about it. And I've talked about it for years. I've not been shy about it. I've talked about it publicly, and I've talked about it in locations where I thought if somebody was really upset about it and wasn't willing to support it, that they would come up and say something to me. And never has that happened. I've had people on both sides of the fence on the Tridge, and I get that. I don't know what will ever happen with the Tridge. No idea. But I can say that the first proposal for the Tridge, I think, was in a comprehensive plan, master plan of some sort, about 1982. About 1982 was the first time that came up. And that's what precipitated it to probably get in that plan that I talked about that was finished around 2014 or thereabouts. So that wasn't any original idea we had. That was in somebody else's plan. And, you know, it looks good on paper. But a lot of things look good on paper.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions or comments in these regards?
Just right now, I'm going to have to be voting no also. My constituents, I've had many phone calls, I've had many people stop by my house to say that right now, this is not where they want their money spent. So I'm going to be listening to my constituents and voting no.
And they told you where to spend it.
Excuse me?
Did they tell you where to spend it?
Streets, sidewalks.
Got my list?
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That's only the ones I drove on. There's more.
So what are council's wishes in these regards? Mr. Uresti?
Most suspend and call.
We have a motion to suspend and call. Do we have a second?
Second.
There we go. So for the motion to suspend and call, Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Uresti?
No.
Mr. Hancock?
No.
Mr. Waxler?
No.
Mrs. Crutch?
No.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Right. For an emergency ordinance, we do need 6 votes in order to suspend the rules and call it to a vote. In light of that, do we have a motion to,
We'll have the motion to let lie.
we have a motion to let lie? Do we have a second in those regards?
Second.
Mr. Engel? Mr. Uresti?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
And Mr. Engel?
Yes.
With a vote taken, we will let this issue lie until we reconvene next week. With the items of legislation addressed, we have a time for citizens' concerns or questions. Does anyone who's a guest this evening have any questions for us? Mr. Sindel? No, you're amongst friends. We like it when guests come and have questions for us.
When will the boat races be?
Oh, I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you.
When will the boat races be?
The boat races.
The speedboat races.
Well, fortunate, I'd like to introduce you, this is Ryan Mack. He is the city administrator. He is the person who knows all about this type of thing. And back there is Kirsty Mack. She's the head of the DDVB. She's also very involved in all the things going on around in events here in town. So I'm sure one of them will be able to answer your question.
Most importantly, with the city administrator's job, it's who's knowing who to contact. to
There we
get
go,
information. And so, by those means, I would defer to Kirsty.
June 8th and 9th.
There you are.
What is that? Second weekend in June. Same area, same location, same fun.
Anything my troop can help for Memorial Day?
We would really appreciate you attending. We do have Boy Scouts that assist with the program, reading the Gettysburg Address. And I don't know how that individual's selected, that's handled by the VFW post. But certainly if you're there in attendance, in uniform as you are tonight, it would be very much appreciated.
Can we bring back a memorial parade?
That is a question we often receive. And obviously, for a long, long time, the veterans, the VFW post coordinated the Memorial Day program on Memorial Day. And shortly after I became mayor, which is 8 years ago, we met with them and they politely asked me if the city would be willing to take over the program, that it was getting to be too much work for them. And that they, at that time, told us that they would appreciate it if we no longer had the parade, that we just had the program at the Riverside Cemetery.
So his answer is probably not.
Not looking favorable.
That's it. Well, thank you very much.
He's afraid. Troop 75 is doing a flag retirement ceremony at Ogleys Village, Friday, May 17th at 5, Saturday, May 18th at 5, and Sunday, May 19th at 2. And they would like to invite anyone who would like to come.
All right.
Can we bring flags?
Yes, you may.
Good question. Well, thank you very much. Good job asking good questions.
Yes.
Unless there's any other citizens' concerns, do we have a motion to adjourn for this evening?
So moved.
So moved. Second, Mr. Hancock. All those in favor of adjourning this evening, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned.